Hi, I've had a lot of people ask me what my opinions are about ENFPs, and I've encountered a few over the years, both as friends and a little bit of romantic interest. In fact, there's one ENFP I kind of fell for that kind of made me look more at the ENFP INTJ bond, or that connection that's there. That's when I first noticed it and started to go back and really look at my past. It's like, how many ENFPs have I known? So this is just a brief summary. Bear with me. I'm trying to keep the videos on this channel very casual. I don't want to have a lot of post-production, a lot of special effects. I just want to keep it very normal. And the main idea that people get a better idea of INTJs themselves, how they talk, how they communicate. That being said, okay, my experience. I've known a few ENFPs over the years. My first impressions of them are not very favorable, and that's more on me. I've known a few, and first they kind of come across as being shallow, because most of the people in my life I've known have been very emotional, but they weren't intelligent. And that's what caught me off guard meeting these people for the first time, is that they're emotional and they're intelligent. And that's what really surprises me. They're also very whimsical. I mean, they just kind of go with things that catch their eye very quickly, and it's unusual for me as an INTJ, is that I go very slowly and meticulously. ENFPs can jump from one subject to another, from one person to another, and that way really surprises me. And then when I've noticed a few ENFPs that would take an interest in me or notice me. I thought it was because I was the new person or the new flavor of the week. It was the novelty of it, not so much what was about me. And that's what I noticed a lot about ENFPs, is that they tend to like everyone. And so when they showed me interest, I thought it was because it was equal to everyone else they're showing. I'm just another person they like. I didn't notice that unique connection very often with the friends I had known personally until I got to a certain point. But generally with ENFPs, I think I'm surprised with the intelligence that they have. I don't think they have as much depth as INTJs, but they have a lot of breadth. So when I would talk about something about astronomy or philosophy or psychology, they've already read a book or they've already gone there. And that's refreshing, because most people don't even bother to read or are even curious about this stuff. Today's video is brought to you by the Federalist. I just bought it at random. They're not sponsoring the video. I got it at random. It's actually pretty good. It's a blend. I like red wines myself. At first I was a little turned off by ENFPs because they're very gregarious. They're very outwardly emotional. And like I said before, a lot of the emotional people I've known in my life, they're very unintelligent. And that's what caught me off guard with ENFPs, is they're actually very intelligent. Another thing I really appreciate about ENFPs is they are very quick to notice someone else who's intuitive. I've known a few analytical types, but they don't usually notice it as quickly as an ENFP that someone's intuitive. Generally, a lot's been said about ENFPs, how they like to adopt introverts, and they like introverts in general, and INTJs and INTPs and specifically. But I don't think they've really noticed me. A lot of my ENFP friends that I've had, they don't really notice me as an ENTJ. They don't give me any special regard or treatment. I've kind of flown beneath the radar. But I've known a few as friends and a few as romantic interests. Things I like about ENFPs. The main thing is, I think the biggest thing is that they accept everyone for who they are. And I think that's beautiful. As an INTJ, I've lived a lot of my life being rejected by people just because I'm not typical. And not only ENFPs accept me like they accept everyone else, but they actually love it. So I can be myself, which is rare. I can't really be myself with a lot of people. I can be myself with a lot of other analytical types, but with other NF types, I can't always. But with ENFPs, for some reason, I can be myself, and they not only accept it, but they cherish it. So that's just incredible. Another thing I think is interesting about ENFPs is they're intelligent, but they're intelligent in a very unique way. Analytical types, they're intelligent in a very typical way. I can usually spot them from a mile away, and they're very much like me, and they come to the same conclusions. There's not much difference between a lot of the analytical types. But with ENFPs, there's that spark of uniqueness about the conclusions they have and the intelligence they have and the areas of focus that they go into. It always catches me off guard. To me, it's like if I have a focus of interest or subject I'm reading on, one leads to another naturally. So if I'm reading sociology, I might read about history and I might read about politics. But they're so random, I can't predict their interest of focus. Other analytical types I can, because you wouldn't expect someone who's into biology to be into physics. Usually they don't go hand in hand. Sometimes with ENFPs, they're all over the place, so they will surprise you. Another thing I like about ENFPs, which is not common with not all of the NF types, is they tend to be big picture focus. A lot of the intuitive types tend to like the big picture, but something about the NFPs is that they're so open that they're even more open to big ideas. Another thing I really like is it's something about that mixture of all those letters that makes them very agreeable. So having P at the end means they're very much open, and J types tend to be harder to get along with. So with INTJs, actually, they can turn off that J, so it makes them a lot more open than what they should be. However, with ENFPs, the extroversion, they tend to be not super extroverted. They can turn that on and off like a switch. Same way with INTJs, they can turn that judgment on and off with a utilitarian purpose. If they're mature and developed, an INTJ wouldn't necessarily be super critical unless it serves a purpose. With ENFPs, it's the same, but it's with extroversion. They can turn that extroversion on and off. And what I've noticed, usually the more mature ENFP, the better they are at turning that on and off. Another thing I really adore about ENFPs, it seems like you can give them just a little bit of boost, just a little bit of pick-me-up, and it goes a long way. I can give 10% energy, and they'll give me 100% out. And that's amazing. And to me, I notice when people give and give, I recognize it and let them know, and I boost them up whenever I see that, because I think it's wonderful. The ENFPs are very much like that. Another thing I think is amazing is that they have a lot of warmth. A lot of emotional types are full of warmth, but the fact that they're intuitive is they're very good at noticing when it's needed, and extroverted makes it very good at pushing it out there, and the P, of course, makes them more open-minded. So that's really wonderful. So the things I don't like about ENFPs, I mean, nobody's perfect. I mean, I got to be a little careful because in INTJ, I'm really good about spotting weaknesses, and I got to put that in check because it's not healthy for me. But there are some things I don't really care for ENFPs that you may have come across of in other channels. It's a pretty common thing. I think the most important thing I've noticed is the tendency to hold things in and erupt like a volcano. For example, like an ENFP person will let someone else push them around and do things they don't like, and instead of giving immediate feedback like, I don't like this, they'll bear it upon themselves to kind of bottle in for the sake of getting along, I guess, instead of giving them feedback, and let that person walk all over them until it builds up like a volcano and explodes. And that's not a great way to handle a relationship, because you always want to give people will treat you the way people will treat you the way you let them treat you. And if you let them get away with stuff, they'll do a lot of bad things. A lot of times a person just needs direct feedback. As an INTJ, I don't always know. I'm pretty good at sensing. With the ENFPs I've dealt with, I can read them pretty well, and I can sense it very early, so this usually doesn't happen with me. But listening to ENFPs talk about past relationships and encounters they've had with people, they don't know how to give feedback. And they think that an act of sacrifice is an act of love, when in fact it's sabotaging the relationship. Another ENFP fault, I think shared with a lot of NF types, is that they see the world not as it is, but as they wish it to be. And there's a lot of strength to that, because that's what makes them so inspirational, but also it makes them kind of blindsided. They're very good at reading between the lines, but if there's no meaning between the lines, they're seeing stuff that's not there. It's really hard to persuade them. They're really good at jumping to conclusions, and if it's the right conclusion, great, you can run with it. But if it's the wrong conclusion, it's really hard to persuade them otherwise because it's all based on emotion. With someone who's logical, they can make a wrong conclusion, you can give them evidence, and you can persuade them otherwise. But an emotional person, it's kind of hard. And that's kind of burned me in the past, in my past relationships with NF types in general, is that they often jump to the wrong conclusions. But I mean, it's kind of it's a trade-off. The NF types are the most inspirational types you'll find, and analytical types, we need that. I mean, we're not very motivated, and I like to compare it to a steam engine. ENFPs are like that fire in the locomotion, and INTJs are the engine. We need both, and the ENFP supply the inspiration, and with that we can turn to a great source of power and energy. It's kind of like that laser. You may have seen memes about a rainbow from an ENFP hits an INTJ, and INTJ turns it into a laser. Another thing that might be unusual is about ENFPs is they're very sensitive. Myself, I've grown up with an INFJ in my family, so I'm pretty good with dealing with sensitive people. It took me a lot of trial and error. So I understand sensitive people. But with ENFPs, they're very sensitive. However, it's kind of hard because they have these hot button topics that you may not want to address. So with a lot of people, common hot button topics are politics or religion, and I think most social etiquette people avoid that for the sake of harmony and peace. But with ENFPs, they can have these core values that you may not know of, and you may stumble upon by accident like a landmine. And that's the job of the ENFP, is they should communicate to you one way or the other, this is not a safe topic to question. As an analytical or an INTJ, I question everything. Everything. There's no core value that I hold that can't be questioned. So it's like a laser, but an ENFP is like a monkey in charge of that laser, and it can point this way and they like it. Oh yes, it's frying that, it's cooking that, it's heating that up, great. But at the moment the laser kind of gets pointed on themselves, they panic and they scrutinize. They don't like that magnifying glass being pointed at themselves, even if it's not an important issue. It could be just something trivial like, oh, you like to wear this color all the time, or you like this band, why do you like it? And they squirm, and because they want to please the person who's asking the questions. They don't want to tell them just talk about something else, or I just like it for what it is, simple as that. They have a hard time doing that, so when that lens is focused on them, it's like a feedback loop, and it just doesn't stop. And of course, there's the problem that you may stumble upon a sensitive issue with an analytical laser of yours, and ENFP will kind of reflexively give you negative feedback, and their emotion will kick in, and it's a kind of a nasty loop. That being said, I mean, it's not that hard to avoid. I think as an analytical person or intuitive person, it's like INTJ, you're pretty good at sensing when it's a bad topic if you're mature. But I don't think ENFPs in general do a good job of steering that INTJ laser in the right direction. But I don't think it's that big a deal. It can be managed. The last thing I'll say about ENFPs is, like what you may have heard from a lot of people, is that they're flaky. In comparison to INTJs, of course, lots of people are flaky, but ENFPs are very flaky. So much so, I have ENFP friends. I'm like, yeah, I've been reading more about ENFPs. I want to get some more I want to get some more field research. I need more empirical data. Let's hang out. Let me analyze and understand, test my theories and hypotheses with you by spending quality time with you. Are you going to this party? You said you were, but you didn't show up. And that's a thing with ENFPs, is they're flaky, and that's good and all. But I mean, you got to accept ENFPs and people in general for who they are. But it does get to a point that they're so flaky, it's almost to the point of being impractical. And like I mentioned, just spending time with them. And in fact, I know as an INTJ, now that I've read a little bit about that connection, that ENFPs really like our types. But if there's ever an ENFP that I don't want to connect with, all I gotta do is not really try, and they'll get distracted and they'll move on. Because ENFPs, they have the HDHD like a dog with a squirrel. They're at the park, squirrel. And so all you gotta do is not really cold shoulder them, just keep going, and something else will come on their radar and they'll get distracted. It's pretty easy. But that's my main complaint with ENFPs. Not that it's that big a deal, but I've also seen it in dating, is that INTJs tend to like to go pretty slow when they date someone. I like to go slow, but with a lot of ENFPs, they get distracted pretty easily. And sometimes it's someone who gives them the most attention at the time, and since I go so slow, I kind of blend in with the background. And now that I stop to think about it, I don't regret it, because there's been a lot of ENFPs out there I've dodged. My personal experience with ENFPs. I've had a few friends and a few romantic interests. So starting with my friends. When I first met them, yeah, like all those things I said, they came across as very gregarious, very emotional. They seemed like they loved everyone, and I wasn't anything special. One thing I noticed about them is that they encouraged me to open up and relax and kind of lower that outer shell as that warm, welcoming acceptance. I do notice like they were always the giving type, and one specific example for my ENFP friend is she would invite all these friends over for a Thanksgiving thing, because Thanksgiving is all about family. And we like to spend time with our friends. And she would invite just friends over and cook for them. She was a great cook. And I was at this party with them, and my girlfriend at the time was talking and everything. But I get sensory overload sometimes, and there was just so many extroverts there, and so many, sometimes even when you get introverts together in one room, if they all connect, they're just blah, 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 and I sometimes shut down. And that's what happened. I couldn't leave because my girlfriend was having a good time, so I had to kind of just find a quiet corner and be off on my own. But I noticed my ENFP friend, she was all of her dishes had piled up, and we're not talking about the dishes she dirtied to make the Thanksgiving food. We're talking about dishes you could tell several weeks piling up. So I was like, oh, good, this is a good opportunity. I'll roll up my sleeves, and I just kind of improvised washing the dishes, and they're like one single sink, slowly washing the dishes, because I knew the kitchen was the quietest place, and the task of doing stuff with my hands freed up my mind. It let me not focus on the ruckus outside. The ENFP noticed that, and she came in and said, "What are you doing? You don't have to do that. I'm caring for you." But to me, it's like I recognize that she was giving to other people. Whenever anyone does that, I want to boost them up just a little bit, because you give them just 10%, they'll double it back easy, triple it back, and that's what I recognize with her. So that's really what I really appreciate that. Well, with a lot of my ENFP friends, like they don't even notice me, and I've kind of blended in pretty well. And they're oblivious to the INTJ ENFP bond thing. So I've noticed it just from my personal experience of dating. I just had 2 romantic interests, and they really didn't go anywhere. But I noticed something was special, and that's what got me into digging more about this, and really got me more about making these videos, because I realized a lot of ENFPs are curious about this, and there's not a lot of information from INTJs, and there's not a lot of examples, because INTJs really aren't good at communicating, and they kind of shut off. So that's why I'm making a lot of these videos, to give people actual experience with other INTJs. So there was one girl I met, and I had a girlfriend at the time, so I couldn't really go anything with her. But that's kind of a benefit at times, because if you're committed into a relationship, you're not trying to play a game. You're just being yourself because you're taken. And that's how I was with her. But I could tell there was this invisible pull. I mean, a lot of women I've had romantic relationships with, I've had to really try. But with her, I didn't try, but yet it was still there. It was just a pull you couldn't explain. I don't know her perspective. I didn't ask it a lot. but it was just a brief thing, but it didn't really go anywhere. But afterwards, I kind of went back and looked at it, and looking in hindsight, I could tell there was something there that I've never felt with anyone else before. And I think she was surprised by my intelligence and my analytical ability, though I didn't really show my introversion so much because of this setting. But there was another girl that really got to me, and it was by accident, really. I wasn't trying to date her or anything. But we started talking, and as she got to know me, I mean, I don't think she had much experience with intuitive guys. That's pretty rare, and INTJs are in general very rare, but intuitive people, it's like 10% of the population. So this second girl, I would talk to her, and what surprised her about me is that I came across as very masculine, and I don't understand that. I never thought of myself as being masculine, but I guess when I asked her, she described it as that I suspect it's every one of those letters in my in the personality type makes you appear more masculine. The NT makes you appear very logical, and the J makes you very decisive. So compared to her, I was being very masculine. With her, since she was single, she had to actually be more masculine at times and more feminine. And what she liked about me, since I was super masculine, is that she could relax and become more feminine, and that's what she welcomed. Because with a lot of other guys, she couldn't do that, because other guys may have been sensing types, and she was intuitive, and she could outsmart them, but she couldn't outsmart me. But I think another thing that really interested her about me is that she said I was very perceptive, and like I could tell when she was talking just by that, because ENFPs are so loose and extroverted. I could tell just by her cadence and her voice if she was in a good mood, or if she was sad or happy or having a good day, just by her rhythm. I mean, I could have a phone call, and in a few seconds I could tell, you having a bad day? And she had not experienced that before with a man. So I think she equated masculinity with a little bit of denseness or slowness, and that female intuition was a female characteristic. But the fact that I could take a little bit of information and extrapolate it and come to a big conclusion really puzzled her. With her body language, her tone, I could tell a lot of things really quickly, and that really surprised her. And she welcomed the attentiveness. I think women in general just really dig the attentiveness that INTJs can have. ENFPs in general, they tend to be very chaotic and disorganized, and they kind of welcome that structure that INTJs naturally provide. And one thing as a guy, I mean, a guy likes to feel useful. With an ENFP woman, this one woman, she was very disorganized, and I kind of brought that naturally. I would plan things strategically. Like, we'll do this, A, B, C. If this happens, this has an alternative. And she just could not do that very well on her own. One thing that she gave me was spontaneity. She had this inspiration, and it was funny. We would talk about ideas, and she'd give like 20 or 30 ideas, and I wouldn't say it like this, but this is the gist. I was like, yeah, 20 of those ideas, I mean, of those 20, 18 are garbage, but those are magic, and I'll tell you why. Let's explore those. Let's drill down deep in what those are. And she really dug that, because I think a lot of P-types in general, but ENFPs, that they're great at having ideas, but they don't know which one is a good idea. And they end up being very inefficient about which idea they chase down. So they have an ultimate goal, what they want, but how they get there, they don't know. They're kind of confused. But INTJ is very good. And that's where that analogy comes in with that laser. The rainbow comes in with INTJ, and the INTJ turns the rainbow into a laser. That's really good about that, where that connection is we can turn that whimsical, fun emotion into real practical usefulness. And INTJ is all analytical types. It's fun to be logical, but we have a hard time being inspired, actually wanting to pursue these ideas. ENFPs provide that. That being said, that that relationship didn't go anywhere. It's part of what I mentioned earlier about that NF type, is that they see the world as they wish, not as it is. And with her wishful thinking saw me as something I wasn't. And she was very religious, and I'm not. But I explicitly told her I was not religious. But she continually kind of misinterpreted what I said. And for that, I can't really forgive her, because I couldn't be more explicit than what I was. But part of it, she got swept up in the magnetism and the pull. I can't blame her. But I couldn't be any more explicit. And she purposely twisted it in a way that wouldn't work. And everybody, when they date and have relationships, they have deal breakers. It's fine, just be upfront about it. And she wanted to be someone that was religious, and I wasn't. So that really hurt. So, I mean, there's a lot of talk about how wonderful the ENFP connection is and the INTJ connection is. I think it's rubbish, because I know a lot of ENFPs that are not in a good position, because they haven't really addressed a lot of their flaws. Just like a lot of INTJs have a lot of flaws and they haven't addressed it. But with the INTJ, that criticalness and that logicalness can make them very, very accountable. An ENFP, on the other hand, there's the drive to be accountable isn't there. But so I mean, finding an ENFP, I don't see that as a goal, because it's nice, yeah, but I look at it as far as dating relationships go. How I felt with that ENFP, I felt deep emotions for her, and I usually have this shell of a barrier for protection, and she really got in there quickly, and I lowered my guard. I usually don't lower guard with a person very quickly or easily. It takes a lot of time. But with her, it dropped very quickly. And it's not like it was anything unusual. I have had relationships with S-types, sensing types, that have been like that, but they took much longer. They took years. But with her, it took her just a couple dates. So it's almost frightening. When they say falling in love, that's what it felt like. It was scary, that feeling when you fall and you have that weightlessness, that you're not causing emotion, she's not causing emotion. There's a third party pulling you, gravity, to each other, and you can't fight it. It's scary. But it's only scary if you fight it. If you go with the flow and just let it happen, it's not scary. You start to acclimate to it, and then finally you hit a firm surface, and you're rooted and you're grounded. So I have faith, I have hope that, I could find an ENFP someday that it connects with. Am I holding out hope? No. Because like I said, I know a lot of ENFPs that just fly beneath the radar. They won't even notice me, because they have short attention spans, and they go to whoever gives them the most attention. Also, I know that a lot of ENFPs, everybody likes them. So, the odds of me finding someone like that is not very likely. I'm single at this moment of recording the video. That might change by the time you view it. But yeah, the ENFP connection and INTJ connection is very wonderful, but it's nothing unique. I've had similar connections with I had a similar connection with the ISTJ type, but it took a long time to get there and a lot of work. I had to put in effort. But with ENFP, I didn't even try. It happened naturally. So that's what's fascinating. Yeah, would I try to go for an ENFP? Sure. But the realist side of me, the practical side of me, knows that the odds of me finding an ENFP are not very likely. Generally speaking, just so you're saying, I don't have much experience with guy ENFPs, but I'm sure I've bumped into them. But there are actually more guy ENFPs than there are INTJs. That's how few INTJs there are. There actually are a lot of ENFP people out there, a lot of ENFP women. I've known a few of them. That's when I had a romantic interest in this one girl that didn't work out. I went to Facebook and I posted, okay, who else here is an ENFP? And I got 10 responses. I was like, wow, there's a lot of ENFPs out there. And some of them I went back and looked at and like, yeah, that makes sense. That person definitely is that type. but they were never single because everybody likes an ENFP. But not many people like INTJs, I don't think. We kind of rub people the wrong way. So, that being said, I mean, the INTJ ENFP connection, if you can have it, yeah, go for it. But it's not a one-all solution because every relationship needs work. And the ENFP INTJ connection needs a lot of work, and INTJ has to be mature, and ENFP has to be mature. So this one girl, if I would have met her in high school, we were both young, we were both probably, it would not have worked because she couldn't turn off her extroversion, and I couldn't turn off my analytical, and I couldn't turn off my critical side, my J side. You have to have some maturity. That being said, I guess if both of you mature, it could work. My advice for ENFPs, maybe I'll make a video about how to find INTJ because it's really hard. It's not hard to find an ENFP. I could probably do it. I just would look for someone who's gregarious, very colorful, yet smart. Easy peasy. But finding an INTJ is really hard because we don't want to be found because society kind of rejects us. So we usually find ways to fly beneath the radar, and we blend in with the herd pretty easy. Not to mention the statistical odds of them. I think at the current rate, estimated at about 2%. So, to put that in perspective, if you're an ENFP looking for a female ENFP looking for a male INTJ, at 2%, you would have to meet 50 people and you'll meet one INTJ. And what are the odds of that person being single, being in your dating range, being attractive enough for you to like them, or share your political views, religion, etc., etc., etc. I don't think it's a realistic expectation for you to hold out breath looking for an INTJ because it's not a guaranteed formula for happiness. There's much more better analysis of relationship success than INTJs. Yeah, it's fun, but I mean, you can have just as much happiness with other types if you just put in a little bit more work. With the INTJs, it's great and it's like a shortcut to happiness, but it's not guaranteed. There's many more things that make a person's relationship happy, like mainly agreeableness. Like the big 5 personality test that you may see online, that's a much better indicator of a better romantic relationship. How neurotic are they? How agreeable are they? Extroversion, introversion does play in. I mean, sometimes if you're both extroverted, that doesn't really work out. But that's just my opinion. Well, hope this helped. Hopefully I didn't discourage any of you ENFPs out there. As far as an INTJ, if you're looking at this video, look for ENFPs. That's my experience. Usually most ENFPs are too extroverted to actually look at things online. They usually are more out there doing stuff. So I'd be surprised if any ENFPs really stumble upon this video. I don't think I have anything more to say. Hopefully you guys like these videos and I keep doing them. That's it.